All right, we have next Arise news analyst Bode Ososami, who is also here to react to the court's decision on the P&ID case in London. Bode, it's great to have you on the show this afternoon. Now,
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you're most welcome. It is certainly a relief that Nigeria won this case, but how did we get to such a bad situation? Let's go back to the rudiments of it all.
Well, Abby, it is a victory, and I do agree with Femi. We certainly should be rejoicing, but it still leaves a sour taste from the little research by Arise chief correspondent John Cooks and the late Mr. Quinn was definitely a dubious crook. And we also know he did not hypnotize the Nigerian actors here. I do recall that the Buhari government did very well to send a top-level delegation to London with former Minister of Information, former Central Bank Governor, and the former Attorney General to protest what they saw as a travesty of justice. So I suspect their efforts also helped. But how did this happen? Just before I go to that, remember that this story broke only because Nigeria was sued in the court as the deal was cancelled. So it's a stark example of the heavy costs of failure of governance as we see the most basic due diligence suspended. We had a similar situation in the OPL 245 case, still with no resolution of justice, when Nigeria awarded OPL 245 to another dubious Malabu oil and gas company. That was in 1998. Having weak institutions, Abby, is like and very strong men, and thinking the stronger man would help you is like having a house with precious jewels, but with no doors and windows, in which you hire a giant to guard the house. Three things could happen. The giant falls asleep and the house is robbed. The giant is compromised and the house is robbed. Or the giant himself robs the house. One of the three is what happened here. So you can join the dots. In OPL 245, the strong man robbed the house. And the question we all want to always ask, has Nigeria learned its lessons? One hopes so. And certainly we need to have an open inquiry, if we haven't had one, on what went wrong with the far-reaching recommendations to plug leakages. The Nigeria end is still opaque and at best sketchy, and we don't know exactly the role the very ill late President Yaradua played. Remember the Minister of Petroleum as well, also late Riwan Lukman. They all resigned. Lukman resigned in 2010, just before Yaradua passed. So was there a vacuum in the strong men's room that allowed this deal, or the strong men push it? There are important questions. Jonathan's government cancelled the deal. He made the mistake of expecting Quinn to go and lick his wounds, and he didn't. And it was very unusual that Mr. Quinn, with obviously dubious credentials, got a very generous award, I dare say, by the UK court. So there could be grounds for allegations of misconduct in the UK judiciary.
Right. I must say, such great analogies you've had for us today, Bode, and they're so apt. But let's move on and see what more can we be specific on when it comes to change, the needs to change and avert future PIDs.
Well, it's not just about legislation, which is what we always focus on. The regulatory and legal institutions are far too weak. They are inadequate. There are inadequate checks and balances. A good institution, Abby, is a humanly devised structure of rules, processes, systems, and norms that shape and constrain individual behavior. And institutions protect the actors by generally promoting ethical predictability, high standards of behavior, and continuity, irrespective of whoever is in office. In Nigeria, our institutions are not there yet. We just have to admit that we have a problem. That's the first issue. A problem that is not solved by having a stronger man to watch over assets. We have to comprehensively audit the regulatory and oversight rules and practices at macro and micro levels. Get control professionals to sweep the system to review for risks, conduct post-transaction audits of the major events in the past years. So we need a serious effort that flags the weak points and advises on suitable adjustments to be speedily implemented. Obviously, you're going to automate a lot of the pre-assessments and pre-screening so that you don't have human involvement. And by these automation, you will weed out a lot of mischief. And also you find there is little or no document trail for important transactions such as this. And I'm not talking about bureaucracy, but having a minimum way of checking whether things were right or wrong. Abby, it's important for there to be consequences. Something like this can't happen. And we can't say A did this and B did that, and for that they would get this. There have to be consequences for encouraging or abetting these deals, and the culprits have to be named. I also suspect that deals like this are difficult to persecute or prosecuting, especially the Nigerian courts, where we have so many secret cows involved that would still be covered. I read the Petroleum Industry Act, a lot of new nomenclature, splitting roles and play with words. I'm not convinced that the checks and balances are adequate, especially with regards to the powers of the key actors. Again, it's also a crisis of leadership, dearth of accountability. And let me end by saying, with all due respect, I'm sure the government means well, but it doesn't help much that the president is the Minister of Petroleum, as we have seen this government and the previous one, even though some say it addresses some of the laxity. The strongman mindset introduces new risk. At best, it helps to whitewash malpractice and excess. It gives corruption and an official stamp, and it delays the day of unveiling and addressing the more structural cracks and leaks. So a lot to be done. And if we don't do these things and we think everything is going to be okay, it's just a matter of time before another P&ID crops up.
All right, certainly a lot to be done. Due process transparency, some key buzzwords flashing at us there on this case. Arise business analyst, Bode Ososami, many thanks for joining us on the show.